We'll wait for the participants to join and then start in a minute. Great, I think we should start. So, hi everyone. I am Akshita Suraj from Wilrow Innovations Foundation, and I'm extremely excited to welcome you all to week 1 of Unconvention 2022, Making It Possible. As you're all may be aware, Unconvention is one of India's largest convening of the social enterprise ecosystem. And this year, we're conducting Unconvention a little differently to ensure maximum accessibility. So we have planned sessions across the next few weeks based on various themes. And this is essentially with the objective to open pathways to knowledge, resources, markets, capital for social entrepreneurs. And not just that, we'll be hosting closed door sessions for entrepreneurs with relevant investors and funders. So without further ado, I'm going to give a few quick guidelines for the attendees. Please type in all your questions into the Q&A chat box, and there'll be a quick feedback form at the end of the session. Do fill it out. And yes, I'm happy to invite Krati to introduce us to all the amazing panelists that we have for the session today and tell us a little more about what we have in store for the session planned.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Over to you, Krati.
Thanks, Akshita. Thank you for such a warm welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm Krati. I'm working with Wilgrow, and today all of us have gathered here today to talk about very important and critical issues around net zero homes and how do we see an incredible opportunity at the intersection of circular economy and affordable housing. And to do so, we have a stellar panelist with us today. We have Jennifer Omen joining us from Habitat for Humanity International Dual Center of Innovation and Shelter. She has 15 plus years experience across international experience across Southeast Asia, US and Europe. And she has been working with across nonprofit management roles for development sector. And we have Pratap Raju from Climate Collective. He has been working in the climate space since last 20 years now, and he has supported 600 plus startups to accelerate in this space. So welcome Pratap, welcome Jennifer. Also, we have Kunshri, the very young and dynamic women entrepreneur with us, working on an innovative solution around circular economy and affordable housing space. She's a co-founder of Angerus Private Limited. So not taking any further time, Jennifer, I would hand it over the session to you. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Jennifer.
Great. Thank you, Krati. And welcome everyone. Really excited to be here with you today. Yeah, we have indeed planned an interesting conversation about sustainability, circularity, and affordable housing as a really emerging and important sector. We're not going to use any slides. We want to maximize participation, so please do put questions along the way into the chat, and or into the Q&A function at the bottom, and we will aim to answer all of them by the end. Now, construction is a top emitting sector of greenhouse gases. It also is highly material resource intensive. Actually, 3 billion tons of raw materials are used in manufacturing building processes. 70% of the world's infrastructure and construction is also going to be built in places like the Global South, in countries such as India that have an affordable housing deficit. So today we're going to talk about those opportunities and barriers to increase sustainability in this space. And to start, we're going to put up a Mentimeter poll. We want to know, what did you think of when you saw the term or the title net zero homes? Did this resonate with you? What important components make up a net zero home? So I believe Krati has put the link in the chat box. And if we can all go in there, you can answer multiple times. There can be multiple components that you're considering that make up net zero homes. I'm just going to give you about 35, 40 seconds more. Great, I see something in the chat. I think it's resonating with you. This is exactly what your company is doing. That's wonderful. I'm glad, and I hope for a fruitful conversation today. Minimum carbon emissions. Even enter that. There we go. Krati, are you able to pull up some of the answers?
Yes, I can just share my screen.
Okay, great.
Please let me know if you can see it.
Yeah, it's coming. Great. Well, keep those answers coming. I think that a lot of times, in my experience, we sometimes have minimized the idea of sustainable housing or net zero into a small group of actions that we can take to improve the sustainability of a structure. And maybe it's, solar panels, for instance, or just green materials. But I think that what's important in the question here is that sustainable, affordable housing has many components that we need to consider. It includes things like, the source and the use of the raw material, the design elements. Are we thinking in the system? The efficient use of the sustainable materials. And right, I like this, the spacing, how the buildings are potentially connected, energy efficiency of the homes. In some instances, it's not even about building. It's actually about renovating rather than demolishing as well. And of course, there is also the energy that goes into running a building, but the energy that goes into running it sometimes pales in comparison in the energy that goes into building it, especially when we're talking about affordable housing segment. So if we were going to house the 1.6 billion people who currently lack access to shelter worldwide, the way we build now, with maybe burnt bricks or cement, it's tremendously carbon intensive, and it needs to change. At the same time, we have to balance this with affordability, aspiration of households, because low-income builders are both very much price and value conscious. And it poses a challenge, a design challenge, as well as an opportunity to sustainable building as well. So, the industry as a whole has to get away from take, make, waste, sort of linear processes, and really think together about how we bring in new design principles. So we might ask ourselves, how can we change the construction sector to achieve sustainability or net zero in affordable housing? Now, Habitat for Humanity runs Shelter Tech, our platform for working with startups. We've supported over 70 entrepreneurs with acceleration, catalytic capital, and industry connections, and 80% of them are actually sustainable innovations. Entrepreneurs like Misotile that make agri-waste into construction blocks, Tavasta that's looking at reducing waste via 3D printing, Billion Bricks that's embedding solar energy onto and into house design. And, I think maybe to get us started, we can talk to another shelter tech entrepreneur. Kunjipreet, I can't wait to hear the inspiration behind your specific product and design. So can you share with us a little bit about your startup?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Jennifer. My name is Kunjpreet Arora, and I'm the co-founder of Angiras Scientific Private Limited. So at Angiras, we have developed So Angiras is a circular economy startup that makes lightweight and damp-proof bricks using the waste material like plastic waste and other industrial waste, which has more better properties as compared to the clay brick and or any other brick in the market. So it all started during our research in the laboratory, where we found that the marble waste industry is one of the largest source of which is which are its largest marble waste in Udaipur, especially when I come from Udaipur city, which is also known as the lake city, and seeing that its environment, habitat, and lakes of this lake city getting destroyed. So, in our as a civil engineer, we thought of utilizing this marble waste and, of course, with the plastic waste, which is a global problem, to make some building materials. So, we have developed bricks and paver blocks. And during our research in the brick industry, we also found and came about the air pollution that is caused by the clay brick industry, not only in India but also in the South Asia. And so we wanted to develop an end-to-end solution where we can utilize these waste material and convert with an in-house and innovative technology to make these bricks and paver blocks which have better quality, better properties compared to the existing bricks, and also while creating a circular economy. So yeah, that's all about the Angiras and how we started, what motivated us to start this project.
Tell me a little bit more about your business model. So how are you thinking about distribution of the product, for instance?
Mm-hmm. So right now we want to go for the direct selling of the products, and we are planning to create decentralized plants in other cities where we can tackle the brick demand and also solve the local problem of that city, or the area around that area around that city. Right now, we don't have any plans to go to any retailer distribution channels, because we ourselves want to understand the customer demand and how the behavior of these bricks in the market, so that we can also build the trust and relationship with our customer.
Mm-hmm. Great. Picking up on that last comment you made about the trust and really understanding your customer, how do you think about the product's accessibility or future accessibility to the low-income sector?
I think that as an innovator, for the low-income sector, I think the key factor plays is the distribution itself, where the distribution plays an important role for the low-income market, where the people are not even get approached to the eco-friendly and sustainable products and innovation, where they are not even aware about such products in the market. So I think creating awareness to different marketing channels, creating distribution, and making sure that it reaches to the right people, where it can solve the right the problem in the market. So yeah, this is what I feel.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think that the low-income market being price sensitive and thinking that through is so important, especially with the scalability.
Yeah, I think I think there are few other factors also plays a role, like such as cost, the values, the benefits that also considered when we are approaching for the low-income market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just a follow-up question, in terms of the product's composition, I mean, there's a little bit of dependence on the municipalities to access, for instance, waste and whatnot. Can you talk about some of the risks or challenges you have in terms of working with different partners or municipal governments?
Yeah, so we have worked with the local municipality, and there are quite challenges. Also, when there was second pandemic, second lockdown was imposed, and there was difficulty in sourcing of waste material like plastic waste and other industrial waste with the from the municipality. I think if you are dealing with the government, you need to have some other sources of sourcing these raw materials, and also self investment is also required. And that's why we actually went on researching of different industries, so like polymer industry, hospitality industry. So yeah, so I think dealing with the municipality is quite challenges, and to deal with, I think you need to have some other sources, and self investment is also required.
Interesting. Okay. I'm going to switch to Pratap. I have a starting question for you. I mean, I think it would be great if we could hear a little bit about your ideas about, the ingredients needed to bridge the gap between sort of the development and the private sector in order to support circular innovation or sustainable innovation in the housing space, particularly.
Right, great. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation here as well. I support clean tech startups. That's what the Climate Collective does. I've been in clean tech for 12 years, not the 20 years I was attributed to, but sometimes it feels like 20 years. It's been such a fast moving sector. When we first started, it was very similar to what happened in clean tech 15, 20 years ago. There were startups coming up, and lots of them. It was innovation, ingenuity, hard work, etc. That was Clean Tech 1.0, as we called it back in the 2000 knots, is what they call it. When in India 5, 6 years ago, we started to see startups come up as well, similar ingenuity, etc. Something is different this time around, and I think it's this realization that it's not technology as much, or being enthralled by technology, but it's use and application. So maybe it's much more sophistication, maybe it's something else, but now we're starting to see how startups and demand get connected much better than we did in the past. So the exciting bit here is oftentimes the corporate demand. We see the embracing of energy or renewable energy by corporate sector, for example, drawing in many other people on the startup and innovation side. So I do hope that the early kind of the indications we're seeing as more corporates and more also homeowners and more consumers are asking for sustainability in housing, and that's pretty important. When they ask for this, it influences the intermediaries, for example, the builders, real estate developers, governments, etc. In fact, if you're in Bombay, one of the things that we've seen in the last few years is that every other new development was some sort of green development. Whether it was green enough, that's a different point. But the fact that the real estate developers believed it was important to be part of the marketing communications does suggest that they feel the demand side is looking for this. And that is going to be what draws in these startups, Kunjpreet, Angiras, and all. I actually have the pleasure of working with Kunjpreet on another program, so it's an amazing solution. But with this demand pull coming from industry, I think we'll see an acceleration of not just the demand, but the other supporting infrastructure, more accelerators, more funding, more finance that will help these startups grow.
I think that's an interesting concept from the demand pull, especially it sounds like these developments are maybe middle or upper income developments built by developers. I wonder how that will become applicable and we'll see the same demand pull at the lower income end of the market. Right.
Because we do have so many different types of housing segments. They don't often overlap. I can draw again from my solar experience. Before this work, I was a solar developer, and there was an interest in solar solutions, for example, for microgrids. I also did microgrids 10 years back. It was disastrous. It was hard work. We couldn't make it happen. Utility scale and then C&I, commercial industrial space, started to take off, and as a result, many things happened. The prices fell for execution, financing, bank financing, and 10 years later, other segments are opening up. So sometimes we may want affordable housing to be front and center. It may or may not, because of course there's a policy angle here, there's other aspects here. But as long as the innovation comes that's reducing costs or increasing value to what people want, what governments want, what other stakeholders want, I think the knock-on effect may open up opportunities even if later in across housing sectors, including affordable housing.
I think it's an interesting point. I mean, there could be a delay in that. I think it also makes it aspirational. In the beginning, I mentioned that, from our research as Habitat, we've done fair bit about about preferences and price sensitivity. It's obviously high, and we need to think about the price of the product, but also that it's aspirational for if they're price sensitive, can't get loans. These are not people who are mortgaging houses per se. They want to see others potentially using those products first and taking some of the early risk before being maybe the first mover or the first early adopter in some instances, not in all, but in some. Question to you in wearing your investor hat. So investment capital in sustainability and net zero was listed as one of the top barriers at COP26 to meeting the NDCs, to meeting the climate goals. As an investor, how do you see investing in affordable housing, innovation in the sustainability space?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about investment is it's never enough, especially in the clean tech space. And we are in a record year last year in terms of how much global capital, at least, has come into clean tech as a whole, some 60 billion odd or so. Housing is somewhat different. We do see two kinds of solutions from an investment point of view. There's technology solutions. VCs, often look at certain kind of scalable, low capex solutions, low capex technologies to fund. We also see lots of solutions that do take capex. Now you see this in the waste sector, which many VCs may not touch. It does not mean if a VC doesn't touch a solution, it's not a great investment. It just means it's the wrong investor. So we are seeing a lot more certain types of investors coming in, especially in areas in India and globally on sustainable mobility. Other areas are popular in data, but I do believe we still need a broadening of investors that see the potential for either more capex intensive solutions, or sometimes, as we know in clean tech, especially if you're talking about B2B, with business, or B2G with government, the sales cycles are long. I mean, Kujrit kind of mentioned the need for self-investment. That is a problem that we need to solve. The need, or what we're trying to solve, is as big as anything else. But just as simple as that, the sales cycle means when there's a next round of funding comes in, who are investors who can invest there? That is in short supply. I do believe it's coming, because I think what we're seeing is something different this time when people look at sustainability. They look at it differently from tech from the past. So the longer term trends, these seem like secular trends that have roots that are much deeper than Clean Tech 1.0, 15, 20 years ago. So I think it's coming, maybe not fast enough, but I hope we can do our part.
Interesting. Yes, I mean, Habitat is an impact investor as well in these types of products and services, and we've tried to crowd in others to come along, for instance, in a round with us on these more technology heavy and intensive products, hard tech. I think somebody had, how can enterprise in the sustainable built environment space benefit from green financing? I'm looking at a question from the chat. Yeah, maybe they can expand upon it too in the Q&A thing. I'm gonna take a couple of questions from the Q&A because I think people had couple, and then the other one, I thought, Kunjaprit, sounds like there's some questions on your product a little bit further. Getting permission from the pollution control board, and if the RICs are fireproof.
Yeah, so the bricks are not 100% fireproof, but yeah, it has some fire retardant properties because of the waste, the other material that we uses. And yeah, we are still like doing our research in making it 100% fireproof. I hope it answers your question.
When you, I think there was a second part about the journey for getting permissions from the Pollution Control Board.
Okay, so yeah, we have not to that side as of now, but yeah, we are securing the certificates from the government accredited labs like PwC, NAPL, and some IT laboratories who certifies these pretty much. But we'll definitely go for securing the certificates from the pollution board as well. But I think that won't be a difficult challenge for the product.
There's another question on the technology. Does it meet the approvals? Can we construct a 3-core project with bricks instead of cement?
Sorry, can you please repeat?
Yeah. Have you gotten all the approvals? I think you've answered that partially already, but
Yeah.
but is it ready to go to be deployed in a large project, for instance, to replace cement?
Mm-hmm. To replace cement bricks, I suppose that means, yeah, right now we are at the pilot stage and we will be launching a product soon in by the first week of March, and we'll be ready for the, not maybe for the large projects, but for the small projects to start with. Yes.
And I think on the statutory approvals, and I wonder if this resonates with you. We find that materials, often there is this challenge or this mismatch sometimes between some of the innovations and some of the standards that are out there right now. So for instance, I'm going to take a country, not India as an example, but recycled material in Kenya cannot be used in a construction product. It doesn't meet the current code and standards today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is also this balance of working with government and influencing, I think, as well, the standards, because innovation sometimes is on that leading edge, right? And hopefully will bring the codes up to new practices as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if you have some thoughts on that through your innovation cycle or your innovation process.
Yes, so for bricks, we have tried to make it as compared to the what the Indian standard of the bricks are, and all the test results and parameters that we have achieved are even comparable, or even in some parameters they are even more better than the clay brick or the flash bricks. And but yeah, I think for the, I totally agree that I think government needs to bring some codes or policies for utilizing these waste material bricks. And I think the BMTPC department of the government is trying to work on bringing some new policies or parameters for utilizing the recycled waste material, or waste the bricks that is made from the waste material, plastic waste. I think there, yeah.
Pratap, I wonder if you have anything to add on this, based on some of the other industries you're also working on this balancing act.
Right. And this is just a little bit more experience across clean tech. Is oftentimes we do hope policy leads transformation. Sometimes either it's lags or it kind of interweaves between each other. Government officials do want to see why or where the demand is, where the acceptance is. And oftentimes, especially in the electricity sector, we see it kind of catching up. And that's also good as well as a conservative approach to creating policy. If you aim to create policy before demand is there, there'll be pressure for subsidies and other ways, and we do have a development goals in our budget that keeps us constrained. So I think when we see especially applications of new solutions, let's say on a construction material, starting to pick up, it may not be mainstream or it may not be for commercial buildings. Maybe it's in other areas, rural areas. We see some new solutions, of course, for in areas around disaster management, things that need to be done fast. Those seem quite interesting. In fact, some of these were deployed during COVID for makeshift hospitals, all this stuff. As this comfort, seeing the deployment on the ground increases, I think we'll also see policy also ease and support this innovation coming in. Now, again, I don't know the housing sector as much as I do electricity, and has different dynamics. But I do see, I think I mentioned when we were speaking last, not Kenya, but Tanzania, people using plastic for outdoor patios. It's a product that's starting to take off, maybe not for houses, and that could be also for customer and consumer attitudes as much as codes, standards, and all. But these are the ways that we can start to increase not just the pressure, but the bringing in all the stakeholders, including finance, including policy, with what the developers and consumers want. It's kind of application by application.
I think in addition to codes and standards, what other things do you think that the industry needs to prioritize in order to push more sustainability or circularity as part of the sector? I think that the codes and regulations are important, and I like that idea of as a sort of group sort of saying, like, this is where we're going, and we want to bring standards along with us. We want to bring policy along with us. What other gaps are missing that need to come together, though, in order to sort of rise to this challenge?
All right. Is this for me?
Or for both of you?
Well, I do have a quick one here, just to follow up on the last point. It's surprising how hard it is to find innovation. Now, the number of people come to us and say, we're looking for these solutions. How do I find? And with a little maybe effort, you could go and see some hackathon showcases that are always there, key accelerators, and you can find. I think this is also related to the fact that our innovation teams at corporates and governments are relatively new, still warming up to startup innovation. Oftentimes the roles are given as an extra capacity for marketing or R&D to look at startup innovation. It's not a separate or a large innovation team. So as a result, one of the things that we've been focusing on is creating these showcases. In fact, we have, I think, 2 showcases coming up just for single-use plastic. You would think to some degree for an FMCG or a large F&B partner trying to, looking at the dynamics in industry, one of the things they would have done is really scout the environment more. And maybe they are, but I think the main one of the hurdles or one of the constraints is this limited resources still to bring in these innovation teams. So building more bridges to connect innovators to demand, that could be supported both by corporates and government. I think this is one of the quick wins. And it's not just for deployment. This is one of the key signals for investors, is actually getting that deployment going, especially once your product is there, you've done your lab tests or some controlled test. Getting a live client is worth its weight in gold when it comes to raising additional financing. So I would vote for that key bridge in helping that first pilot, reducing those search costs, etc., for the demand side.
Kunjiprit?
Yeah, I think for the from as an innovative side to achieve that sustainability and prioritize the sustainability for the industries, I think that there's some incentives that needs to be absorbed and given, or some perks that can be given to the industries, like the cost benefits. And I think that I have seen that many government policies have been introduced in the waste management sector and in the green building solutions, which is providing some tax benefits and cost reduction. so that which can also help from the supplies and the from the supply and the demand side for the both the suppliers and the builders in the sector who are consuming those products.
Very interesting. I see that where I currently reside as well, where smart subsidy has gone a long way in incentivizing most people to consider solar panels, for instance, or green roofs, because there are subsidies that are coming back for you. So I think we see promising practices of that.
Yeah, right. And as a startup or the product supplier, I think we can also provide some more benefits, features, and if we can save some cost and reduce because of these, I think this market is very cost sensitive as well. So yeah, this is what I feel. So we can't hear you, Jennifer.
Okay.
Right.
Wonderful. So given the competitive landscape, how do you think the consumers perceive a product made from C&D waste? What's the user's acceptability?
Comparing to the C&D, the bricks made of the C&D waste, I think bricks has the other more benefits. It's being lightweight and the waterproof as compared to the cement bricks or the waste or the bricks made from the C&D waste. So I think that's are the few competitive advantages that the bricks has. And also that these bricks that is made from the C&D waste, including the cement, and also requires other natural resources that are the chemicals and cement, which ultimately harmful for the environment during the production system. So that's benefits also we can provide better in the from the environment perspective on through the bricks.
Right. And it's actually a good question generally for sustainability, especially there are a lot of applications of waste to products across the board. India is very different from other markets or some markets. It's very hard to have a secondhand eBay here in India, and that's something that's hampering, for example, a lot of new solutions. In fact, although last night I was at this small little place in Goa, and they had a thrift shop there. It was amazing to see, and something that you wouldn't expect to have to be quite so active here in India. I would only add that some these attitudes to either waste or sustainability do change fast. I mean, if you look at the Beyond Meat's example outside, this idea of a veg burger, before it looked like impossible because there's a certain kind of fast food chain view that you can't replace or touch the Big Mac or something like that, and quickly getting adopted. Even in technical areas like solar, 2013, I was selling solar to rooftop C&I commercial industrial clients, and they were telling me this is not for India. This is literally 18 months before we were one of the bigger markets, and it almost became a maximum. Of course, this makes sense for India. The costs are low. I'm not saying that as a result everything will have a fairy tale story like this. I do think that the current attitudes to waste may go through kind of tipping point rather than a slow grind to acceptance over time. And I don't think it's going to be particularly challenging in the construction side in particular, as opposed to other areas of sustainable consumption to get acceptance from a consumer point of view.
I mean, I think that in the past, there have been challenges though in the conception of like what is a brick, and for instance, there have been a lot of soil stabilized block programs supported by different types of partners in many places. Might not have been the right fit. But I will say that there were a lot of tests to encourage building in this way. And I think one of my colleagues went to visit, and the house made with the soil stabilized block was next to the house made with the other bricks, because there was a strong perception that house, we weren't sure about that one. And whereas the one that was built by the bricks that I have seen my grandparents live in, I have seen for many generations, with my own eyes. I think that some of that, when you're putting your money, and again, not a mortgage, into that type of investment, there is somewhat of a challenge. But I also think we shouldn't constrain ourselves because of that. We should say, sustainability with younger generations is really picking up, and they will be making those decisions and investment decisions, hopefully, into their home. And so I think change is certainly, we can look at change from a number of different parameters.
Right.
Okay. Let's see.
And you may be right, Jennifer, in that there may be a step change in the next generation here in attitudes to in particular waste or reuse and sustainability. That maybe it's not in a lifetime of some startups, but it is in a lifetime to see transformation because of this new generation has grown up quite differently to my parents and their parents, etc.
I think we see that in a lot of things, right? With younger generations being willing to take that shift. So I'd be sort of looking out for that trend. But yeah, behavior change in this, we have to look from how we also create value as companies. What value creation are you what relationship are you having with low income households who want to build with your product? So, if it's treated like it's the bare minimum, I don't, that's not a value creation. That's just a one-way relationship. So. Okay, I think we have a couple more questions in the chat. Let's see. What are any downsides we should consider with circular building materials? Would you like to?
Yeah, I hope I'm audible. There was some lack of internet issue.
You're on, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just open the question. Yeah. So I think that using the circular building materials, there could be some scalability issue that is, I think I can see right now because of the availability of the waste material. Because we have faced this issue where we want to scale the bricks, and we were facing some lack of raw materials, and there's some cost issues also attached to it while scaling to the other parts of the country. Expanding. So I think that's the one of the risk and the downside. I think I can see right now is the availability of the waste materials, especially when there are cost constraints attached to it.
Pratap, anything to add on circularity?
I'm not sure. It's very, I think it's too early to think about downsides, except what Kunshpreet was talking about is in certain areas of waste and recycling, there is a material or supply issue. And in particular, it may be also a competitive supply issue. For example, I've seen business models, whether you're talking about biomass or just recycling, expect a municipality or local aggregator to take the biomass to come in. The business models change quickly in the life of a startup. If you remember, in India, we had all these biomass producers about 10 to 15 years ago. And the price of the feedstock increased multiple fold when they saw that, and all the businesses, almost all of them, went bankrupt. This may be more kind of birthing pains solve rather than fundamental kind of relook. I do believe, for example, there are new rules on sourcing, kind of allowing more kind of licensing for an area, so that sustainability in those models can be stronger, at least from a sourcing point of view. In terms of circularity as a whole, I think I'm not sure, at least from a business model investor point of view, what to say right now outside of some of the technical points on sourcing. But maybe sometimes it's good not to have a response if you don't know.
Yeah, I think some of it we have to see too, right? The downsides as it expands outward. I mean, we've seen the proliferation of plastic waste startups. I think there are some challenges in their business models, and I don't know if that's a downside in use of the product, but the question is, will it get to a scalable level? Right. So there will be I think that we're still waiting to see, I guess.
Right. I can add one more thing about circularity. Sometimes we're solving a waste problem, and although we're starting to see, at least here in India, a little more models come out, but sometimes we can design out waste as opposed to solve the waste problem, and that's an exciting area for circularity.
Yeah.
But it may not be something that we can do easily, because you have to change a lot of business models, change a lot of profit or tax streams. Many things change when you talk about redesign or in like a reuse or other angles like this.
Right.
And so in some way I do expect actually circularity and innovation to continue to be exciting, because we're just starting this path.
Well, and given the resource constraints, right, like the raw material constraints, we will have to also reduce the input as well. And I mean, we're going to be, I believe, forced in that direction. And so, yeah, we can think differently about raw materials as an abundant resource and price it accordingly, perhaps.
Right. And maybe one other thing about circularity is sometimes, the saying, to a hammer everything looks like a nail. Did I get that right? So when I think about especially housing, the first thing I think about is how much housing do we need? What size of a home do you need? It's kind of a correlation between how much material throughput you'd need to build your living environment. I think these are exciting trends as well, which will reduce pressure on our environment, in addition to what we do have to build, because that is a continuum, may change. This is, of course, as important or as applicable in areas of affordable housing, because we're solving another development goal that's primary. It's not a space issue more than other factors, but I think when you think about other consumer trends, policy, etc., in addition to innovation and redesign, is where the excitement will come.
I see a question around interesting models on rental housing or housing as a service. Do you think such models are viable as a scalable, sustainable model? And I would love to say, I think that there are interesting rental housing models that are coming up globally, and shared space arrangements and whatnot. And I think rental is a really important piece of a healthy housing market. And not everybody wants to buy as people migrate to cities to work. Maybe they don't want to invest. So more housing rental models, are necessary. And it's something that we as Habitat for Humanity in India are looking into. I would say that we work with a company in South Africa that does backyard rental. So you can build a small rental unit, maybe 3 units, for instance, or even just one, and take a loan for that property. So it's a productive loan, and rent that out as a landlord, and obviously gain the income, and you're making the most of the space you have in your backyard, actually, which works in certain types of peri-urban areas. And we've seen a couple of those pop up. So I think that might be an interesting model, but rental housing absolutely plays an important part in the housing market, and in maximizing spaces. Okay, I think we're coming up on time. So maybe just see if there's one final question. Okay. You know, Kunjipreet, maybe you could share just in closing a little bit about where Honduras is headed, and you know, what words you have for entrepreneurs like you.
So Angiras is the motive of Angiras is not to build a single plant of for making the bricks and solving a one city or one state problem, but we also are looking for creating a decentralized plants and going for a franchisee business model to create the micro entrepreneurs in tier 2 and tier 3 cities where we can solve the problem of local waste material. And the beauty of this product is that it is not concrete. It is not that they are not need to be any two main product waste material. We can also do experiment with the local waste materials, such as like as I mentioned, the Rajasthan has the problem of waste marble waste. So likewise, the Tamil Nadu has the problem of granite waste. So we have also experiment with different kind of waste material. The main idea behind is to use the local waste material and they provide the product back to the society and the community for the infrastructure development. And the takeaways that I can give for the innovators like me is I think that building a circular economy product is is the best that we can do and we are doing. But also I think that distribution is as much as important as doing the research and experiments. So I think the distribution, I think that can be that needs to be looked after and sort that to make sure that your product is reaching to the right market and solving the right problem. Yeah, that's what I could say.
Great. And hopefully you can drop your contacts in the chat so people can follow up with you. There were lots of questions about the technology that I'm sure your website or socials can answer. Okay, and Pratap, do you have any lasting thoughts or takeaways for, you know, a changing sector?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no in that compared to what was there 5 years ago when I first started supporting startups to now, it's an extremely exciting area. There's a lot more support, you know, your Shelter Tech platform, the work we do at Climate Collective, more investors coming in. At the same time, as I've been an entrepreneur for many years, I know it's still hard. That it still looks like we need support. It still looks like there's not enough funding. It takes forever to get clients. So I think that the more people who can crowd in to help in these areas, we still have a long way to go to make to bring more and more innovation to the market. Yeah. I don't mean to be negative, but that's actually positive. I do believe there are so many people who want to do this too. Yeah.
Yes.
It's inviting them in.
I share your positive sentiment. I think it's early stages, and like I said in the beginning, I mean, I really think it's exciting that lots of entrepreneurs are coming to the table to think about this, and you know, we as Habitat are excited to partner and think through, you know, shelter tech solutions. So especially in the circular economy or sustainability space. So get in touch. And with that, I just hand it over to Krati.
Sure. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all the panelists for participating today. It was a delight to have you on board, Jennifer, Pratap, Kunjpreet. It was really enriching to hear your experiences. And I hope our audience was able to take away a lot of useful information from this session. And we'll be seeing a lot of startups working in this space in the future. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we have shared our feedback form. We will be sharing the feedback survey form once we close the session. And we have shared the impact survey form in our chat, requesting everyone to please fill it. It will be really helpful for us to work on the future webinars and sessions. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you to